All right, I got the idea for this a couple weeks ago, doing my daily Bible reading. I came across a passage that made me think of this, but the title of it is Don't Mess with God's Allegories. I'm going to give you an example of an allegory from Galatians chapter 4, verses 22 through 26. It says, "For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise, which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Agar. For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all." And this is the only verse in the Bible that uses the word allegory. That's why I just chose to read it first. And I'm not preaching on this particular allegory, even though it would be a pretty timely subject to preach on, considering what's going on in the world today with Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem. Amen. But I just wanted to point out that this is what the Bible calls an allegory. And we know the Bible is full of allegories. You got things like the sacrifices. All the sacrifices in the Old Testament are pictures of Christ in some form or another. You got things like the tabernacle. I believe that's a picture of like Christ's body. And you got the Levitical laws are all allegories. And you could go on and on with the examples. But one specific one I like to point out is the story of Naaman. And not so much the allegory itself, but what happens when someone comes along and messes up God's allegory. Because God's trying to do something here, and you got somebody that comes on the scene and messes it up. And the first example of that is from, if you'll turn to Numbers chapter 20, verses 7 through 12. It said, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. And thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them." Well, this was the second time something like this happened. The first time was soon after they left Egypt. God told the people got thirsty and were complaining about water, and God told Moses to smite the rock in Horeb. And he smites the rock, and water comes out and waters everybody. And this next instance, the second time, was years later, when God tells him to speak to the rock. And he got angry with the people, and he hit the rock, and water came out. But God got really upset with him because he didn't speak to it. He hit it. And God punished him pretty severely by not letting him enter into the promised land, which, by the way, is probably another allegory you could point out, where Moses represents the law and Joshua represents Jesus. The law can't get you into heaven, but Jesus can take. That's another allegory you could probably preach on this. But where am I going with this? Moses messed up the picture, right? God's painting a picture. I believe that the first time the rock was smitten was a picture of Jesus when he was smitten. The Bible says the rock in the wilderness was Christ. The rock was smitten. Living water came out. It's a picture of Jesus down on the cross, providing salvation for everyone. And I think the second picture would have been, if you speak to the rock, it's a picture of our faith. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And Moses smiting the rock again messed up the picture, so God punished him pretty seriously. And just what if Moses had done the wrong thing in the Bible and never even mentioned the punishment? You'd probably have the Catholics using this passage to support, weekly mass, crucifying Christ every week or whatever. They could probably twist it and make it mean something like that. But I think God calls our attention to it when he punishes Moses so severely. Now I'm going to go back to the story of Naaman. And if you'll turn to 2 Kings chapter 5, this is probably going to take me the most time to do is read. I want to read this whole chapter. 2 Kings chapter 5, it says, Now Naaman, captain of the host of the kings of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria, and he was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. And that means he had leprosy, kids. He was a leper. He wasn't a leopard. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told the Lord, his Lord, saying, Thus and thus saith the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 pieces of gold and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come to thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so that when Elisha the man of God had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away and said, Behold, I thought, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God and all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall not then, I pray thee, be given thy servant 2 mules burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offerings nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. And this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. But Gehazi, this is kind of the part I want to point out, but Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master hath spared Naaman this Syrian, in not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him, and take somewhat of him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and when Naaman saw him returning after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him, and said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master hath sent me, saying, Behold, even now there be come down to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver, and 2 changes of garments. And Naaman said, Be content, I take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garment, and laid them upon his servants, and they buried them before him. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master, and Elisha said unto him, Whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, Thy servant went no whither. And he said unto him, Went not mine heart with thee, when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? Is it a time to receive money, and to receive garments, and olive yards, and vineyards, and sheep, and oxen, and men servants, and maidservants? The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. And I think Naaman in this chapter represents like mankind in our sinful nature. We have a disease called sin. Naaman had leprosy. Leprosy was an incurable disease. That's why the king flipped out so bad when he was commanded to cure somebody of his leprosy. He's like, Am I God? Can I cure a man of his leprosy? That represents us and our sinfulness, and our sin is incurable. Yep. Elisha represents Jesus in the story. He's the only one that can cure someone of this leprosy. Jesus is the only one that can save us. And let's see where I'm at in my notes here. Yeah, so Elisha denies Naaman's attempts to offer reward or some kind of payment for his healing. He denied him twice. He's like, no, we're not going to take him. He denied it. And that represents the freeness of salvation, right? Salvation's a free gift. You can't give any rewards for it. You can't pay for it. You can't work for it. It's a free gift. This is where Gehazi comes in. He goes in secretly and chases down Naaman and gets Naaman to give him some money, lies to him, gets him to give him some silver and a change of garments. And this totally messes up God's allegory. I think God's trying to paint the allegory of salvation's a free gift, and Gehazi is coming along, making it look like it costs something. And if he got away with it, just like the other allegory, people would come along and say, okay, see here, this is an allegory of salvation. They would say the Catholic Church could be like, you do have to name it. Gehazi represents the priest, because the priest is a servant of the Lord, and you gotta do your works, and you gotta pay your money to the priest. They could use that, but God's punished Naaman seriously, gave him leprosy and his seed. I've always wondered if there's like a guy walking around the earth today that's like descended from Naaman with leprosy. So I think Naaman represents a lot of these guys. Paul Washer, John MacArthur, they're always trying to add works to salvation. The Catholic Church, all the other Protestant or Catholic or whatever Christian denominations, they're always adding works. So you could basically call him Paul Gehazi Washer or John Gehazi MacArthur. Yeah, there are no works involved in salvation. It's a completely free gift. I love the allegory here, and I just thought it was neat that I try to listen to the Bible while I'm at work, and sometimes I listen to it and I don't really think about it a whole lot, but I was thinking about this story and like, why did God punish Gehazi so much? And you kind of see the allegory of what God's trying to do there. So I guess you could call the sermon, Don't Be a Gehazi, or Look Out for Gehazi. That's pretty much all I got.